Welcome back to part 2 of my interview with General Ben Hodges. Let's get straight to where we left off. Now, from the last two answers you gave, there was one about how the wording, the messaging has changed from the German government and it's going in the right direction in terms of mindset, in terms of defense and security. And also, about positioning of forces, closer to the threat and to Russia. And right now we have this debate about peacekeeping force in Ukraine and that's a very big if a peace deal is reached with the Kremlin, which I have major doubts about. But if that is the case, then I, as the author of the first article worldwide about peacekeeping in Ukraine, What's Peace in the Donbass Worth to Us, that I wrote in the fall of 2014, drawing on my experiences and what I learned about the peacekeeping operations in former Yugoslavia. I am, of course, in favor of sending also German peacekeepers in that case to Ukraine. But right now, what the Chancellor said is that there would be readiness to position them on NATO territory adjacent to Ukraine. And just want to hear your thoughts about what kind of peacekeeping force, with what kind of mandate it might take to work after a peace deal is reached with Russia.
So again, you've got a lot of experience in this and have put a lot of thought into it. The model for me, which maybe you'll disagree, but I think you'll appreciate, is the NATO I-4 that went into Bosnia in 1995, where you had a real combat force, almost 3 divisions of NATO troops that
60,000, yeah.
deployed in with all of the stuff, every bit of kit to implement the Dayton Peace Accord. It was called the I-4 Implementation Force. And you had, and here's the keys. You had a clear mission. You had a very clear chain of command. And you had rules of engagement that allowed I-4 soldiers to immediately use deadly force if there were the provocations. So those are the whatever it is that's going to provide the security guarantee for Ukraine. It's got to have those 3 things, because the Russians, no serious person believes the Russians will ever live up to any agreement unless they're compelled to do so, and for sure they will test in the opening hours whatever sort of agreement there is. And Captain Novak is going to need to be able to shoot immediately if a Russian in front of you violates that agreement. You can't have to call back to Brussels or Berlin or Paris or Washington to say, "Oh, we just had a drone strike. Can I shoot back?" Or what do we do? The Russians will see immediately that that's an absolutely worthless security guarantee. So coming up with numbers is the easy part. Everybody said, we'll provide 10,000. How do you know how many you need until you know what the mission is? And what capabilities you need? To me, that's the first thing, is what do you want this force to do? What is their task? What capabilities do they need to accomplish that task? What rules of engagement would they have? Then I can tell you, okay, that will take 60,000 or 100,000 or 10,000, depending on the mission. And that's the hard part, is getting the mission right and the rules of engagement, coming up with the bodies, the troops. That's a much easier part, although it's obviously very visible. Now, I think to have a bunch of troops sitting in barracks somewhere outside of Lviv or in Poland will be zero deterrence to the Russians. Zero. They have to be in Ukraine, because that's what shows commitment. That's what shows commitment. I can remember in October of 95, there was still a discussion about where should the I-4 headquarters go. And of course, the NATO plan was to put it in Zagreb, because Zagreb had not been destroyed. You had, infrastructure, transportation. It was a place from which you could command. And this was in the Clinton administration. And the president said, nope, we got to put it in Sarajevo. That will show commitment. We're putting the headquarters right there, and where it'd be more dangerous, more difficult, but it was commitment. It was about the mission. And so troops sitting in Poland, that's not commitment. And I think the Russians will spot that immediately.
Well, first of all, thanks for the promotion to captain. But if I remember right, then at the stage where we had IFOR with 60,000 troops, that lasted for about a year. Germany was part of that, but
Yes.
only in a supporting role in Croatia. So they did not enter Bosnia, as far as I remember, until the SFOR mandate came about, which was about a year later, and they have been there almost, with some hiatus before 2022, almost ever since. And yes, so that's the Western Balkans is of course another place where we could see instability, and also where NATO could be challenged in Montenegro, Albania, and of course, the Bosnian security is also part of European security. But we are short on time, so let me perhaps ask you about something that's on the minds of a lot of people. I will never apologize for being happy about a dictator that's deposed and that's going to face a judge. So I was pretty happy when Maduro got arrested and taken to the US. Although, of course, in the immediate aftermath of the operation, it wasn't clear what the plan was. And to the extent that it's become known, it has quite a lot of disappointing elements. But when there's talk about, supporting democratic movements or governments or leaders against a dictatorship, that's something I can be on board on easier. And we have wording from President Trump that, he would do something if the Iranian government, the Islamic Republic, uses force against the peaceful protesters and the people. And we're several days into massacres, into shooting of these brave millions of protesters in Iran. But what do you think could be an appropriate U.S. response, and would that include a military component? And because of course we have these experiences, or the U.S. has experiences with things going wrong in that part of the world with their missions and interventions. So what's your wisdom on that?
So day one, when you go to staff college and you have your class on strategy, day one they say you have to clearly identify the end state. What's the objective? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And then you balance ends, ways, and means. You what are the resources, etc. And of course, what's happened here in Venezuela for months, they talked about drugs, and they put the Navy out there, build up all this combat power, and then we discover after Mr. Maduro and his wife are arrested and taken to New York City, it was never about drugs. It's all about oil. Um, and it turns out when the president brings in all the oil executives, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for them taking over these terrible oil fields because they're thinking like investors, how much work has to be done, security, who's running the government, stability, all the legal things. And a couple of them were like, wait a minute, the Venezuelans owe us $12 billion from when they took all of our stuff. And so it's obvious that the administration had not properly thought through all the way to what is the strategic objective. Now, control of oil is part of it, it appears. This would give the United States the ability to, really cause fluctuations, or not fluctuations, but to control market prices, assuming that they eventually are able to get Venezuelan oil working. But the problem is, you've got 30 million Venezuelans, and already the regime, minus Maduro himself, is still in place. They're already smashing any evidence of people that are thinking, "All right, we've been liberated." Not the case. And so I'm still waiting to see how this plays out. Who's actually going to run Venezuela? The president posted a picture last night saying, "I am the acting president of Venezuela." Okay, this is not a movie or a Netflix series. We're talking about real people, real life, and Americans are starting to ask, like, what the hell is this about? And of course, it's not just about Venezuela. This is the administration attempting to implement their new national security strategy, where the Western Hemisphere, the president says, this is ours. No Chinese here, no Russians here. Nobody else has access to any of the resources here except us, unless we allow it. And so Greenland, of course, is part of this hemispheric approach. So the cost and lost credibility, damaged relationships, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but with our European allies in particular, is already enormous. And I think the administration is starting to feel the heat from even Republican members of Congress who are saying this is unacceptable.
Yes, and of course, the Deltas delivered a fantastic operation to the Trump administration, but of course, even out of this success, the potential that has been generated can be easily squandered. And the question is, of course, what is the follow-up and what will happen in terms of reputation and trust, as you said, for America and for its military? And that's still very much unclear, including maybe Trump's been emboldened by this military overnight success, and that creates more appetite for similar kind of successes, as we've seen in other cases
Exactly.
of people who've used the military successfully, especially if you don't even lose a single soldier. It may create the expectation that you can repeat that a lot of times. And well, let's put it this way: when Israel fought with Iran, the use of the bombs that the U.S. military delivered was very effective. It was also without any losses of soldiers, and perhaps this can be deceiving to think that all operations could work like this, like clockwork, with minimal losses.
Yeah.
So, of course, we're talking about big countries with large populations and about resources that not only the US would like to get their hands on. Okay, thanks for taking the time, Ben. It was a great conversation with many insights, and hope to get a chance to repeat that at some point. You're
I
always
would,
welcome to come back.
thank you. I would like that.
So thank you very much, and thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time. To be sure not to miss out on the other great content on the channel. You can also find information on how to support the work on this channel in the description to this video. Thanks for watching.